What's going on, everybody? It's that time again where I do the picks. It's week 13. Last week, because of Thanksgiving, we had to do the multiple games and do them all and do them early. And I was 11 and 5, and I felt pretty good about that. Although if I was going to win money, I would have had to go on at least 14 and 2. So that is ridiculous. These guys have been really, really good. So I'll take 11 and 5, and hopefully can continue to move forward throughout the second half of this season. So admittedly, there is a middle part of this portion, and I'll get to it when I talk about that. I'm a little concerned about the picks that I've made, but I'll try to give you reasonings why I take those. So for Cleveland and Houston, as we kick it off, Cleveland goes to Houston. It's the return of Deshaun Watson for what, a little over 2 seasons with all the civil suit cases and everything else that was gross. 7.5 points for Houston. Now, Houston has one win on the season, right? I know everything that's surrounding Deshaun Watson. There's going to be a little rust. But at the end of the day, again, there's still Nick Chubb, there's that defense and everything else. Cleveland, no matter what happens, should be able to stay within that number and cover it. So I'm going to take Cleveland, although I can imagine there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in that game that could get kind of ugly. That's just my guess. Baltimore and Denver. Denver having to cover 8.5 as they travel to Baltimore. Now, Baltimore has been very frustrating over the last few weeks, and every time I take them, I end up getting a loss. I'm probably going to end up getting another loss because it is Denver. Denver is the one team now that I absolutely cannot take as far as everything else. You just can't trust Denver. And maybe Baltimore against Denver, this will be the one team that they don't blow a lead against that they have. And surrender it and then don't cover the number. So Baltimore's got to cover 8.5. I think that they can do so, so I'll take the Ravens. Atlanta and Pittsburgh. Atlanta getting 1.5 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Kenny Pickett over the last couple weeks since we started the second half hasn't been too bad, and Pittsburgh's looked fine. And it seems like that's kind of a pick 'em here and there. And Atlanta hasn't been the same team they were at the beginning of the year, saying that anytime you've seen a spread with Atlanta, you take it, you get an automatic win. I'm going to take Pittsburgh here on the road. It's just 1.5, very close to a pick 'em. I'm going to trust Mike Tomlin and Kenny Pickett and the rest of them and try to get it done. Philadelphia at home as they welcome Tennessee. Tennessee getting 5.5. Now here's my reasoning for taking Tennessee. Over the last few weeks for Philadelphia, the spreads, anytime they're not covering those spreads. And Tennessee is one of those teams as Ryan Tannehill continues to try to get healthy. Derrick Henry's had a couple of down weeks. Philadelphia should have a hard time stopping Derrick Henry. I know you got Linval Joseph and Adama Sue now, but Philadelphia over the last few weeks, although they're winning some games and they lost one, they've looked a little more human as far as giving up points. So give me Tennessee to keep it close enough, and I'll roll with the punches there. I'm going to take the Titans in the 5.5. Detroit's at Ford Field as they welcome the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's 1.5. So everywhere that I've looked, everybody says that this game's going to be very close. I know Detroit's kind of been riding around the sunset here, the Marvel Midnight Suns, or whatever you want to call it here in the sense of. But Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence is good. The defense is pretty good. I think Detroit might get a loss here, or at least the game will be close enough to where it will be a 1 point game and I'll be okay with the 1.5 point spread. I'm going to take Jacksonville and the 1.5 points, and my total that I have to do for this game toward the end of it, I'm going to put at 52. I think there's going to be some points scored, at least like a 28-25, something like that. I mean, that would give me a loss if that's the situation, but somewhere in that example, I'm going to take Jacksonville in this very close game. Washington and the New York Giants. Giants at home getting 2.5 points. Now, I know what everybody's saying about Taylor Heineke, about riding too close and being the beneficiary of some turnovers and lucky and this and that. I see that every week about Taylor Heineke, but what happens with Washington when he's the quarterback? They win games. I think that they can win by a field goal. It's at 2.5. I would at least give them that. If Saquon Barkley continues to struggle as he's been, then I would comfortably take Washington. But nonetheless, I'm going to take Washington to cover the 2.5 points on the road. Minnesota and the New York Jets. Jets getting 3.5 on the road as they travel to Minnesota. I've seen this game go either way, and I've seen a lot of people taking the Jets. I know the Jets have been good throughout all year, but Minnesota needs to continue to show something. And you still got Justin Jefferson on the other side of that sideline. And some of the defense can be decent at times. Minnesota should be able to cover this number. I know it's 3.5. I think maybe they'll cover it by at least maybe 5.5. I don't see really any more than that. This game will probably be close. A lot of these spreads are close this week, but I'm going to take the Vikings at home. Green Bay will travel to Soldier Field to take on the Bears. Now, I really wouldn't normally take Green Bay. They did a pretty good job last week in covering the spread. Aaron Rodgers, hopefully he's healthy. Maybe it's Jordan Love. I don't know if Justin Fields, he's not on the injury report right now, but this is a game where if Jordan Love plays and it's just Justin Fields, then maybe I would switch my pick. But I'm going to assume that Aaron Rodgers is good to go. And Chicago is one of those teams that can be hot and cold. It really is the Justin Fields show or nothing else. So if he's not fully ready to go, even though he's not on the injury report, but if he's still banged up a little bit, and Aaron Rodgers maybe banged up a little bit, this is a game you want to fade for the rest of the week. But since I got to take one, I'm just going to go ahead and take Green Bay. Favorites for a reason, I'm going to guess, and I'm going to live with the 3.5. That has to be covered. Although, like I said, if you have to pick this game, don't. Seattle and the LA Rams. So it's going to be John Wolford starting there for the LA Rams as they're getting 8.5 points. I don't see any other reason to take Seattle or the Rams, although Seattle disappointed last week as far as not even winning the game. They got Josh Jacobs pretty much last week, pretty much got destroyed. I'm going to go ahead and take Seattle anyway to bounce back because the Rams look like a team that could be getting a top 3 pick, and that pick is going to belong to the Detroit Lions. So it'll be good if Seattle beats the Rams, let alone even covers that spread. I got it at 8.5. Hopefully they can do it, but as long as it's a Rams loss, it gets better for the Lions, which is good for me on that side. Now this is the portion of the schedule that I'm going to go ahead and say maybe fade my picks, but I'm going to try to give you a reasoning why I'm going to take those. San Francisco at home as they play Miami. Miami getting 3.5 points. I know San Francisco's defense has been absolutely unreal, but every single time San Francisco is a favorite, I have to scratch my head because they don't end up covering this. Miami has an unbelievable offense. Tua, Jalen Waddle, everyone else like that, some of their defense can show up. This isn't a game where San Francisco is going to shut out Miami in a half, just like they've shut out some other teams. Will San Francisco win this game? Probably. But will I keep Miami to cover it in the 3.5? I will. I'm going to take the Dolphins and the points and just hope that they cover. The LA Chargers taking on Las Vegas. I see a lot of you saying that the LA Chargers won't win both games against Vegas. They're saying Josh Jacobs is going to be a little banged up. He's not going to be at 100%. I mean, he absolutely took the best of Seattle and just destroyed them last week, even though they only won in overtime. It was an incredible performance for Josh Jacobs, but it was Josh Jacobs and Josh Jacobs only. So if he's not 100% good to go, Chargers have been playing well enough of late where I see it's only a 2.5 point spread for the Chargers to cover. I'm going to go ahead and take the Chargers. I understand what that means. It would be a sweep on the other side, but if Josh Jacobs isn't 100%, I'm going to take the Chargers, only having to cover 2.5 and live with it. Kansas City travels to Cincinnati. The Bengals get 2.5 points. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm doing this. I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals and the 2.5 points. Now, I don't have any other reason not to take Kansas City other than the fact that Joe Burrow could beat the Chiefs 3 times in a row. I like their offense. I hope Joe Mixon can play. I think Joe Burrow can do a good job, and there's a lot of weapons on both sides. And Kansas City can give up some points, but Patrick Mahomes can absolutely dot all over the field. This should be a fun game to watch. I would rather watch that on the Sunday night rather than Dallas and Indianapolis, but I'm just going to go ahead and take Cincinnati. I know that's probably a scare tactic, but there's got to be some upset somewhere. So that's why I took the Dolphins in the 3.5. I took Cincinnati in the 2.5. There's got to be something somewhere, so I'm going to take the Bengals. That's just what I'm going to go with, but maybe you want to fade San Francisco, Miami, Chargers, Vegas, and Kansas City, Cincinnati, because they're 3.5, 2.5, and 2.5 respectively. Dallas and Indianapolis. Indianapolis getting 10.5 points. Now, they lost to the Steelers last week and they were favored. Dallas, they're a heavy favorite against Indianapolis. I understand what happened last week against the Giants in the backdoor cover spread, but they would have easily been able to cover that 9.5. I don't see why they can't cover a 10.5 against Indianapolis at home. I don't have any other reason to go the other way. I'm going to take Dallas, and that's going to lead us to the Monday night game between Tampa and New Orleans. We know how it's been for Tom Brady and Tampa when they face New Orleans, correct? It's always been a game that's been very close, and the defense has always struggled to stop some of the stuff on the other side, and New Orleans has ended up getting the wins as Tom Brady's drives have stalled to nothing more than field goals. This New Orleans team is not the same team that it used to be, and if Alvin Kamara can't continue to get on the scoreboard, and he's had a couple rough weeks, Tampa's going to do enough. This is a game in the division that they need to win to be able to stay at first place. Hell, even if they lose this game and Atlanta loses the game to Pittsburgh, I mean, you could have a situation in that, NFC South now, in the sense of Tampa could be a few games below 500 and still finish first. That's how ugly as it is. I'm going to take Tom Brady to cover the 3.5 in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what does that leave my review for the week? I got Cleveland having to cover 7.5. I got Baltimore at home having to cover 8.5 against Denver. I took Pittsburgh on the road against Atlanta, getting 1.5. I took Tennessee on the road against Philadelphia, getting 5.5. I took Jacksonville on the road against Detroit at Ford Field, getting 1.5. A very close pick'em game. I got Washington favored, getting 2.5 points, having to cover 2.5 points against the Giants. I got Minnesota having to cover 3.5 against the Jets. Green Bay at Soldier Field having to cover 3.5 against the Bears. I have Seattle on the road against the Rams having to cover 8.5. I think the Rams could be one of those teams picking top 3, so Seattle should bounce back and cover that. I have Miami to keep it close against San Francisco at home, 3.5 point spread. I took the Chargers having to cover 2.5 against Vegas on the road. I took the home dogs, Cincinnati Bengals against the Kansas City Chiefs. Might want to fade that one, but that's just something I'm going to throw out there. I took Dallas at home in Jerry's World, covering 10.5 against the Colts, and I took Tampa at home, covering 3.5 against the Saints. Those are my picks for the week. Hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you back for Week 14. Peace out, everybody.